Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan White, and today I have with me Ethan Metzler. Now, Ethan, he just became the resident director for the Pillsbury-Huff Residence Hall here on campus earlier this semester. Ethan graduated in the spring with his degree in physical education for K through 12, but he still feels that the Lord has called him to remain and stay here at MBU for the time being. Ethan, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Okay, so walk us through the progression of how you went from getting your degree in the spring, being conferred, walking across the stage, to being back here in the fall as the resident director of the building that you stayed in.
Right. So over the summer, I had an opportunity to apply with for a different position. That ended up falling through after a while, but I ended up coming back here to work just to pay bills. I was doing housekeeping work, which was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it, even though it was just cleaning stuff. But I enjoyed that. And then towards the end of the summer, my now current boss all over again, because she was my boss for when I was an RA here too. She had asked me if I had a full-time job yet, and I said no, and she said, well, we have an opening, because the current resident director at the time, Stephen Crane, he was getting ready to move on to another job. So she had told me about that, and I never thought that would be a possibility, but once she told me, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm interested. And so that's kind of how things moved in that direction.
What role do you think that God had in that? What do you think the purpose for that might be?
Oh man, it's crazy. The God's shown me more and more what that looks like every single day. It was such a blessing that I didn't even realize that I needed. But the more that I kind of figured out what my bill situation was going to be with loans and all that stuff, because loans aren't cheap, I realized that this was actually going to be probably one of the only situations that I could have been able to be on my own for. So God showed me more and more just how he provided in that sense. I get to carry on with FCA, which has been pretty cool. I've gotten to continue working with the football team as well. So many different opportunities and avenues that God's provided for me to continue to pour into the lives of students here, but in just a different capacity.
Has this opportunity strengthened your spiritual and your faith, your spiritual life and your faith?
I would definitely say that, yeah. I mean, any time you go from one role to another, I mean, it's different and it takes adjustments, and obviously trusting that God's going to provide, especially when things are difficult or those transitions are even a little bit tougher, having those growing pains. But yeah, I'd say that I am. I mean, it's been cool to kind of look at things from the perspective of being a freshman at life, if you will. It's kind of funny ending up back on the bottom of the totem pole, because there's always a bottom of the totem pole. But it's been a really good growing experience, learning how to just be a little bit more professional in the way that I carry myself. Yeah, it's been really good.
So, I mean, you have a history of spiritual leadership here on campus. You were a figurehead on the football team. You led FCA here. And you were an RA. Mm-hmm. How does being an RD and being kind of the spiritual figurehead of this building compare to what you've done before?
Well, in a lot of ways, this position is similar to being an RA that has a lot more responsibility. So in that sense, it's nice. So that's kind of familiar to me, just kind of the way that we do things at Res Life, because honestly, for being part of Res Life, it's more of a servant opportunity, more of a service opportunity, rather than just, I'm getting free room and board, which is a blessing on top of all that. But yeah, that in a lot of ways, like it's really good. And I think that it gives me an extra, just a bit of an added platform to tell people like, yes, this is good. I've experienced this stuff, like small groups and FCA and so many other, these Bible studies, different chapels and things like that. Like, this is good stuff that you should be a part of, and kind of having that influence, even as a kind of a volunteer football coach for the kickers. Like, I get to spend a lot of time with the guys that live in my building, but I also get to spend time with them on the football field. And so having that added influence as a coach, essentially too, that's pretty neat in and of itself. So that's ways that, when I was a player or just a resident assistant, ways that I didn't necessarily get the opportunity to reach those guys in that capacity, but God's kind of given me that added platform as somebody who's in charge of a building and is on staff here. So
how has becoming the RD affected your relationships with people who you thought that, maybe you weren't going to see again whenever you were graduating last year? You thought, maybe you were going to move on. How has that affected the relationships and the dynamics with students or RAs, administration, and res life, that kind of stuff?
Right. It's changed in some ways. There's other ways where, if you were friends with somebody, months ago when we were both students, like, those relationships in some ways have to change. But in other ways, the nice thing is I can still be a friend to them, and there's that mutual respect. So it's not like, oh, that other person's taking advantage of me because I'm in a higher up position. But so in some ways, some relationships had to alter a little bit. Just obviously more boundaries with certain relationships and others. But a lot of the ones with like the pro staff, like Tara and Victoria and Kayla, like, those have all been really good, and they've all been really strong throughout the last few years prior to me getting this position. So that's been really good. So I've gotten to know them better, and they've been such a blessing and a resource to me. Being coworkers with them now, that's been awesome. But so I think that those are just a few ways off the top of my head that just some of the relationship dynamics have shifted a little bit.
What do you think, if this position hadn't come along, what do you envision that you would be doing right now?
Oh, man.
Or can you?
Like what I mentioned earlier, just how this position, I didn't expect it in terms of helping me out financially and stuff. I don't think that I don't know what I would be doing right now. I honestly may have had to go move back home, live with my family, just because, like what I mentioned, I didn't realize how high my monthly was going to be for student debt, it was just crazy. But this position, it has covered so many of those things that would have been stressors. And so that was just more evidence as to why God had me here at this time, why I didn't have a teaching job or that other position that I applied for. Like, it just, so many things just made me realize that this position was just a humongous blessing, and He's got me here for a reason.
What have been some of the hardest transitions and the biggest challenges that you faced thus far, like the things that maybe you didn't necessarily know stepping into it? Right.
Well, so one of the interesting things I remember from being an RA here, if something went wrong, it was, oh, go tell Steven. I'll go talk to Steven. He'll know what to do. Now it's go tell Ethan. So it's, which I don't mind. I mean, a lot of those ways I've gotten to see Steven handle a lot of those things over the years. And there's been some new ones. There's been some things that I've talked to Tara about, and she's been like, even though I've been around here for 12 years, this is a new one for me. And so we're learning together on those. So it's good. I think it's good to have those learning experiences to grow. And if for whatever reason they happen down the line, I'll know how to handle them and know how to handle them in the right way. Let's see. One of the things too, I have always been used to having either siblings or my family that I lived with or a roommate. So living by myself, that one's one that I'm not a huge fan of, but that's okay. There are definitely perks to living on your own, and it took some adjusting, but it's going good. I feel like that's smoothed out. At first it was a little rough. It was like, ooh, this is a a lot of space for one person. So
what do you foresee in your future, in your short-term future, in regards to this position, and where do you think this leads you, or what do you want to do?
Right. I I think my passion is definitely for working with students. It doesn't, honestly, I mean, based on the way that God directed all this stuff, I mean, it doesn't matter what age, whether it's college, high school, elementary, even little kids. I mean, I have experience with a lot of just pretty much with any age. I mean, just growing up with siblings and all that. I know one thing that I've always felt like I've been drawn to is sports ministry. So maybe long term, I would love to do something like that down the line. In the meantime, though, some things that God's put on my mind is just like I feel like I've grown a lot in this role and in this position, and maybe I mean the time that I feel like it might be time to move on is kind of when I stop growing, in this position, and because I don't see jobs as something that you just get money, you work, you die. I mean, obviously, I believe that God's got a distinct call for our lives in the way that we're supposed to treat people and interact with people. And this job is such a blessing and a great opportunity to interact with. I live in a building with 90 guys who are trying to figure out what to do with their life. Like that's such an incredible ministry opportunity. And so, until God's done with me in this specific role, I'm blessed and thankful to have it. And so.
All right. Well, that's. Oh, we'll have to leave it right there. Ethan, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for being on with me today.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
All right. And for MBU Timeline, I'm Dylan White.